Yes, ma'am. Uh, well, tonight we have Martha Wright and Brad Weir with San Antonio Water Systems. Um um, and their program is going to be directed at SAW's Drought Management Improvement Plan. Just a little bit of background on Brad and Martha. Brad is the planner and conservation department at SAWS, focused on water saver rewards, water smart, and all the things garden style in San Antonio. And I think most of you are well acquainted with garden style. It's a very good resource if you're interested in landscaping. His years in South Texas landscaping and public horticulture gave him lasting enthusiasm for native plants that don't die when sprinklers and gardens break down. Martha Wright is a manager in the conservation department at SAWS, focused on Connect H2O AM, metering and data. The background in energy and water efficiency. She loves to use her multi-industry puzzle-solving experiences to help homeowners and businesses alike to better understand and reduce their water use. So I'll turn this program directly over to Brad and Martha. I apologize for not greeting you earlier because I just got finished with a Zoom call prior to you coming on. I'm trying to send out emails. So welcome to our chapter business meeting, and we are so delighted that you're here. So I'm going to turn it over to Brad and Martha.
Thank you, Bob. And thank you, everyone. It's great to be here among friends. I want to make sure you can hear me before I begin.
Yeah, we hear you. Can you verify that you can see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we're here tonight, as you see, we're here to talk about the Drought Management Improvement Plan, which is it can be an intimidating title, but it's something you're going to know a lot about after tonight, and it's something you're going to be hearing a lot about over the next few months. It is going to be coming up before the SAWS board and the city council at the end of the year. But we'll get to that. Briefly, many of you may get your water from or know people who do get water from San Antonio Water System. But just a little brief background, it's over 2 million served by SAWS right now. That's sewer and potable water. And that's over 600,000 water accounts. That's the size of the population we're currently serving. It's a diverse base. This is mostly residential in San Antonio. We don't have a lot of industrial customers, but roughly half of our water supply comes from the Edwards Aquifer. This is not a surprise to anyone here that we live in a region that is drought prone with cycles of drought and flood. And during droughts like we've experienced for the past couple of years, that supply is restricted. When the EAA is now in stage 4, that means our water supply is cut from the Edwards Aquifer by 40%. However, we plan in advance for these situations. Martha?
Yeah, so conservation is definitely a culture in San Antonio for many resources, but especially for water for the reasons that Brad just explained. And a lot of customers, including you guys, have been fantastic partners with our department. Across the entire state of Texas, water conservation has been a critical element of what utilities do. And the state as a whole does planning. The Texas Water Development Board does planning as well to make sure that we have water supplies for generations to come. And in their most recent water plan, they state that we plan for a time when generally water supplies are the lowest and water demands are the highest. And that's exactly what we do at SAWS as well. And that's been put to the test last year and this year with the weather that we've had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, yeah. 2021, 22, and 23, they represent our weather at its most extreme, between them some of the coldest, officially the hottest, and the driest years on record in San Antonio. We entered stage 2 watering rules a year ago. That's serious for San Antonio. And if anyone needs to know, this is when we water 1 day a week from 7 to 11. While we plan for alternate water supplies, they can't alleviate the fundamental challenges that occur with this kind of extreme weather. I mean, and you see it every day as you drive around. As dry soil pulls away from the pipes, that combines with the stress of a lot of pumping to break pipes, contributing to water loss at a time when we need water the most. The forecast favors an El Nino, which might mean more rain this winter, but we have to plan for what might happen without it. So in the meantime, we do have, as I mentioned, the Edwards Aquifer is 50% of our water supply. And in the past 10 years, SAWS has worked hard to develop alternative supplies at considerable cost. There's not water sitting around that's cheap. We always say the cheapest water is the water we get from conservation, the water we don't use. But you do see on this graph, you see obviously the Edwards Aquifer. You see the Vista Ridge, which is the new water supply from Burleson County. It's a long pipeline, very expensive, that accounts for about 20% of water in the San Antonio area. With these alternate sources, we have enough supplies, we have enough drinking water, but only with stage 2 watering rules. And we are in a historic drought. It's extraordinarily unusual for the Edwards Aquifer to be this low for this long. And we're going to talk about the drought of record in the 1950s. But we're currently under a 40% pumping cut. And it's no secret, if you've heard, and SAWS is pushing this hard into the media through your bills, we need people to have the appropriate level of concern. It's not an emergency, but it is serious. If we're not good at stage 2 watering rules, it means we might have to go into more onerous rules that none of us want, and we're going to talk about those. We're trying to work together to get the most savings out of the current stage 2 watering rules, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Martha's, let's look at this in more detail. You have a picture of the J17?
Yeah, so as Brad mentioned, the Edwards Aquifer cutbacks to utilities and to all customers, all Edwards Aquifer pumping customers, are based in large part on the level of the J17 aquifer. And so with our task of planning for a year when supplies are the lowest, tracking the aquifer is critically important to our community. We're probably one of the only communities in the US, maybe even the world, that reports on the local aquifer level on the nightly news, which I think is something very cool that San Antonio does and that all the news stations do. So we plan for the extremes. Our planning generally combines the length of the 1950s drought, which is shown, well, 1 year of that drought, the worst year of that drought, 1956 is shown on this slide in yellow, combines that with the intensity of the 2011 drought. You can see how fast the aquifer dropped in 2011, and we saw a similar drop last year, which was concerning to a lot of us. This year, we saw a nice little bump from the spring rains, which I don't know about for you guys, but for me, it seemed very long ago at this point. But we did see a nice little bump in the aquifer back in May and June from those spring rains. But then we saw the subsequent drop as we see in hot, dry summers like this. So ultimately, it's been critical for us to try to reduce demand this summer, last summer also. But how do we do that? How do we reduce demand? Well, conservation has helped us to gain permanent savings through changing fixtures, landscapes, and more over decades, right? We've spent many years focused on indoor conservation, and the chart here on the right shows that we've been pretty successful with that. Our indoor water use across the community for residential properties seems to be under control. Of course, there's always room for improvement and there's always leaks to address, but this is a good sign for indoor water use. But drought demand management has become increasingly important. Summers like this year and last year show us that we need to do more in this area, but the ultimate goal here is to prevent demand from increasing in hot, dry periods. But before we get into drought demand management, Brad's going to talk a little bit more about conservation and our efforts over the years, especially outdoor conservation.
Mm-hmm. And I get to talk about the fun part. Conservation in San Antonio, here's the garden style website, but around, I mean, we work in the conservation department, of course, but we're able to say, and we often say it, conservation is a way of life in San Antonio. And if you know Greg Eckhart, you know that we've had once a week watering since way back in the days of the Acequia Madre. We've been at this at SAWS since the 90s. And you know, our early investments in water conservation, you'll remember the toilet replacement program. These accelerated San Antonio's drop in what Martha just talked about, the GPCD, the per person water use per day. And in fact, kids who were part of like the first school age programs in the 90s, they're now part of the workforce and they're purchasing their first homes. We say that conservation is a three-legged stool. One of those legs is the regulation and enforcement that we're going to be talking about, but the other tools are the incentives and the education that you're already familiar with. This is the next slide, the residential incentives. And I'm assuming you all know these programs very well, but if you want to know more about them, they're on gardenstylesanantonio.com. But these are the programs to reduce, I mean, I'll ask, anyone know what uses the most water in a landscape? And I bet you're saying
irrigation.
Okay, that's right. Yes, everyone says grass, and it's not actually the grass; it's the irrigation. But yes, that's why SAWS has all these turf removal programs to replace turf and irrigation with plants and landscapes that are more resilient. Now, we boast incredible participation in these programs. I mean, I think 66% of San Antonians have participated in at least one of the conservation programs. But in 2011, we shifted to outdoor, what we call outdoor transformation. But you know, shifting from indoor fixtures to actually removing, this is kind of the hard part, but changing landscaping. You can see examples of it here on the screen. Of houses that are doing some of the coupon programs where they'll remove grass and SAWS will help them pay for the plants. And it's caught on. I mean, you do see this around town. When we started in 2011, these kind of landscapes were not common. And they are in parts of town very common these days. That's great. SAWS has a staff of about 25. This is the next slide. Thanks, Martha. We can reach, I mean, we reach through the irrigation consults that we do where we come out and pay a doctor's visit, a conservation doctor's visit to the house and go through the landscape and the sprinkler system. We can reach, you know, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 people a year. But in a city, with a customer base of 2 million people, we luckily have 6 nonprofit partners, contract partners who vastly expand our education reach. It's not enough to just change the landscapes if you're gonna keep watering the same way you did before. And we learned that actually very early on when we were doing the coupon programs. We required them to remove the irrigation from the section that they were landscaping. So we know it's not enough just to change the landscaping. There's education that's needed to sustain it. And our nonprofit partners expand our reach and with classes about water conservation, landscape design, you know, more efficient irrigation, plant selection, wildlife. These are all fun. And in fact, the Water Saver Rewards program is relatively new, but it gamifies this so that customers participating in events like this or learning about water saver gardening or classes at the botanical gardens or master gardener classes, they receive points or incentives, but those turn into coupons that they can take to nurseries to help pay for their landscaping supplies. And you see some of the events on the screen. One of those is a rain to drain tour coming up. So that's education and incentives. We offer those to our customers to draw them in. At this time in drought, though, the third leg of our stool is enforcement. And Martha's going to tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so all the conservation programs Brad has just mentioned really have helped us to grow that culture of conservation in San Antonio and to decrease use over time. We mentioned earlier that drought demand management is our efforts to prevent demand from increasing in hot, dry periods. And We've been pushing stage 2 restrictions for over a year and a half now, and we're seeing pretty good compliance, but this summer has been rough for us, and last year was rough for us. So what I'm showing here is a GPCD chart. In the water world, this is very common. GPCD stands for gallons per capita per day, or simply put, gallons per person. It is a very normalized number in the water industry that basically tells us all of the water used across a community, across a service area, divided by the number of people residing in that service area on an annual basis. And so this graph goes back to 2000. And back in the early 2000s to around the time of the 2011 drought, we saw a lot of volatility in our GPCD on an annual basis. But we've reined that in through a lot of those conservation programs and through this outdoor focus that we've had. And so we've seen this long period of more consistent use, even though we've had drought years during the past decade or so, until 2022. And so we've put on here the increase that you see from 2021 to 2022. I will say 2021, the GPCD dropped quite a bit because we had such good rainfall, well-timed rainfall all summer. But the increase that we saw in 2022 left us concerned. If this is unchecked, this will be costly for SAWS as a utility and the community as a whole. So of course, I'm the former resource analyst for the department, and so I'm a former data person in the department. And so of course we looked into who used the water, where did that water go when we saw this huge increase. We knew that if we could identify who used more water in 2022, that we could start coming up with ways to address and really to reduce the increases going forward. We know that the vast majority of our customers are following the rules and use relatively low amounts of water. So I want to start by saying that and to say thank you to all the customers who are following the rules and who are conserving, because it helps us so much in a year like this. And so we want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing and to keep spreading the message that you are. But in 2022, the top 6% of residential water users use 21% of the water. We're also seeing this summer, 2023, from electronic meter data through our Connect H2O AMI program, that about 5 to 9% of homes are violating restrictions. So a lot of those customers that were in the top 6% last summer are also customers who are violating restrictions this summer. And so our challenge is with those who are using huge amounts of water and violating the rules.
So if you remember that graph Martha shows you where the trend, we're using 9% more water this year, that's multiplied across 2 million people. Bexar County is growing rapidly. And new residents, they don't bring water with them. We did believe that over time, as houses became more efficient, that it would save water, and that is true to an extent. But with the amount of housing construction going on in Bexar County now, new houses might be more efficient, but they have more fixtures. They might have 2 or 3 or 4 bathrooms. But importantly, and you know where this is going, every new house is built now with a sprinkler system. That wasn't the case in the 90s or even in the aughts, but today it's standard for every new home. And for every new home buyer, many are from places who've never had irrigation before, but when they move in, it's turned on, and it's using a vast amount of water in the hinterlands of Bexar County. So with less efficient houses and more residents, new water supplies in Texas are going to be extremely costly. Desal is, and you all know this, desal is not an easy answer. It's our most expensive water supply. In the meantime, conservation remains our cheapest source of water, the water we don't use. And during extreme drought like this, an important part of that is enforcement. That means, well, that means a lot of things. It means when you see water waste, reporting it on the SAWS website. That means that San Antonio police officers are patrolling neighborhoods and citing for water waste. That means SAWS staff like me and Martha are out there too at 2 in the morning. And we have the advantage of knowing where the SAWS pumps are working the hardest. We know where the water is going. And so we're able to target sectors of the city where we know, where we expect we need to increase the the conservation signal. But that means driving around at 2 in the morning looking for violators. It's not easy. You have to be there at the right time. I'm on the next slide, sorry. You have to be there at the right time and the right day. It's not simple. And all that new construction we're talking about, that a lot of that is outside the city of San Antonio. It's outside the ETJ where San Antonio's conservation ordinance can be enforced. It's in other cities. We can't enforce outside those areas. And in addition, even in the areas where we can enforce, the fines, it's $137 for a water citation. The fines haven't changed in 20 years. A water citation costs $137. It's a criminal citation, and it involves a visit to municipal court. It's no fun, but in addition, it doesn't send a strong message. It really doesn't send a strong message to commercial customers. When your water bill is thousands of dollars and you want your mall or bank or office building to look green, $137 citation isn't going to make a big difference. And we can see that with the pattern this year. So looking at these numbers, we are concerned about current enforcement mechanisms and whether they're going to save enough water going forward.
Yeah, so our goal with what we're proposing is to be fair, effective, and efficient. And we're proposing 4 things. So some of you may have heard of some of these already, but we'll run through each of them and then we'll move on to questions. But the 4 things that we're proposing are a change from the municipal citation process that Brad was just explaining to a fee on the bill. We're proposing a new version of stage 3. We're proposing to improve enforcement of existing irrigation standards and to limit drip irrigation to 1 day per week to close that loophole that's currently there for drip irrigation. So the first of these is a change to a fee on the bill for waterway citations. We're proposing this to be able to do several things. It would allow us to move away from the criminal process that we currently have for enforcement, which is time consuming for customers and for SAW staff, but also for municipal court. Municipal court has been great in this whole process, but I think tomorrow we're dropping off like 564 citations, and that's a lot of work for municipal court also. This change would also, importantly, allow us to apply citations equally to all customers. Brad mentioned that right now we can't cite outside San Antonio and the San Antonio ETJ. And we know that this summer, the high water use that's shown on this map in orange, those are other cities. There's a lot of really high water use. There's a lot of high water use in San Antonio and in the ETJ as well. But there's a lot of high water use in other cities. And right now we can't currently cite in those areas. If we move to a fee on the bill, we'd be able to have fees that would reflect repeat violations, which we think that when a customer keeps violating as a repeat violator, the fee should increase for that customer to send a stronger message. We also want to be able to send a stronger message in deeper stages of drought. If we're in EAA stage 4, we could maybe have fees that increase versus when we're in EAA stage 1. Brad was also talking a little bit about commercial versus residential. A large commercial violator that is using a lot of water for irrigation, they should probably pay more for a fee when they're violating to send a stronger message to them than a residential customer that's using maybe 2,000 gallons each time they run. Lastly, we're really excited that we'd be able to offer a water education class. The easiest way to explain it is defensive watering. It's kind of silly to say, but we think that we should offer a water education class for the first violation for single family properties. Our goal with all of this is to educate our customers. And so this would be a great way to do that with our single family residential customers. And so to implement a change like this, we would have to go to the SAWS board. They need to adopt a rule of service, making it clear that all customers must follow drought rules. And then City of San Antonio needs to pass a city ordinance that approves a fee or a rate associated with non-compliance. So that's the first thing we're proposing.
Thank you, Martha. The second thing we are proposing is a new stage 3. Everybody's heard of it, stage 3, and I get asked all the time, is it going to happen? Well, actually, we're proposing something different. The current stage 3 is meant to be an emergency measure when our water supplies cannot meet the demand. However, we have alternate water supplies in San Antonio. When Edwards Aquifer is in stage 4 and 5, we are still in stage 2, and we have to ask, how do we send a strong signal to customers that they need to continue conserving? We are proposing a stage 3 instead of every other week watering. What it would be a surcharge for customers using large amounts of water. And we're talking, this won't affect 90% of customers, but for customers who are, the numbers have not been worked out, but customers who are using lots of water, they will be paying for that by a surcharge on their bill. Next slide. The third proposal is to just improve the enforcement of existing irrigation standards. Texas actually has, this may come as a surprise to you, but Texas actually has some of the strictest irrigation standards on the books. The irrigation industry wants those standards enforced. That's great. But we've learned that most new home building with irrigation in San Antonio is being done outside city limits where those standards can't be enforced by city inspectors. They can't be enforced the way they need to be. This results not only in inefficient irrigation, but it means the homeowners aren't benefiting from the strict regulations that Texas has about irrigation. And over time, this is costly, not just for the water supply and saws, but for the homeowners themselves who aren't getting irrigation that meets standards. There are examples in San Antonio of neighborhoods that are built following the standards, and they're using 20% less water than comparable irrigation in adjacent neighborhoods. So we're just following the rules on the books, but SAWS is proposing to assist the city in enforcing those standards. Next slide. And the fourth proposal is to improve the water savings from drip irrigation. You may have heard of drip irrigation. I always say it's the most efficient irrigation ever invented to water the Israeli desert. However, the way it's being used in San Antonio, it depends on how it's used and who's using it. It doesn't necessarily apply less water than sprinkler irrigation. In fact, the rates in a lot of new commercial construction are similar. So it's not using less water than sprays, but it can be run due to a loophole, the way the water ordinance was written 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It can be run 8 hours a day, every day of the week. And SAWS is proposing to finally eliminate that loophole. Now you see in the picture on the screen, I mean, this isn't a surprise, but when drip is actually being installed under grass in new subdivisions where it can't be seen, it can't be maintained, and what the potential water loss is huge. So SAWS is proposing to limit drip to once a day and to close the loophole that was carved out for drip in the original.
And by once a day, Brad actually means once a week.
Once a week.
Just to clarify.
Thank you, Martha. I hope that was clear. So
Yes, it was.
We've run this by the commercial irrigators, and they're of course very interested in this. But we do have enormous amounts of drip being used in street medians and HOAs and commercial properties.
And one of the concerns that the commercial irrigation industry has brought to us is the concern about new sod and new plant material being put in. And we do have the variance process, the landscape establishment variance process that allows properties just like this one on the screen, where they're putting in a brand new landscape that at a new build home, they can apply for a variance to be able to water more often, to water in the plant material. We know that that has to happen, and we want plant material that is set up to succeed. So So we've talked about a lot here and we wanted to leave plenty of time for questions, but I do want to say that there's still a lot to discuss. We have not determined what the fee structure should be for citations or what the threshold we would use for a surcharge is. We're looking at the cost of service behind those measures to get an idea of what some of those amounts should be. You've also heard us both say fair, effective, and efficient today. We really want these measures to help address the issues that we're seeing with a really small percent of customers, both single family and commercial customers who are not conserving, who are not following the rules. 90% of customers will not be affected by this, but it's that 10% that we really need to work with and figure out how to get them to comply in the best way possible. So the goal is to rein in discretionary aesthetic water use. It's not to punish people who are already using water carefully. And we're currently, so what comes next? We're currently in the community input phase. We're meeting with stakeholders like you all. And we've just launched a website. They call it a micro site. It's wateringrules.com. It's a place where we're asking for input. We want the community to go there. We ask that you all write down wateringrules.com, or if someone with Master Naturalist can send that out to the group, that would be great. There's a short survey on there. There's a place for comments, but we really want to hear from folks what they think, what's resonating, what changes you would propose so that we can have the best plan for our community. And that is what we have.
And we do have time for questions. We
So
have a
there's
lot of questions.
Yeah, I'm glad people like the graphic design on this. There's a whole campaign you've probably seen around town. You may have heard on TPR or other stations, and it's Wrangle Your Water Use, Garden Like a Texan. So we like that a lot, and we think it's the right message for our community. So, okay, Brad, you want me to start with questions?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning of questions. And the first question was, how does SAWS incorporate climate change into its models of water availability in the future? And that is a great question to start with. I would say that last year, so we talk about planning and the planning that water utilities do. At SAWS, we're required to do a 5-year water conservation plan. We will be submitting that this coming year, 2024, in May of 2024. And then we also do modeling of our water supplies and water demand, and cross those to say, when are we going to need more water supplies and all of that in periods of drought. And so we do that modeling on kind of the worst case scenario, a 9-year drought of record that several years into that drought, when we'd already have supplies that are stressed, they will be stressed even harder because we expect that year 4 or year 5 of the 9-year record drought would be the worst year of it. And so that modeling is part of our water management plan. We were working on that in 2022 and planning to put it out to the community last year, but we actually put a hold on that plan while we watched to see how the aquifer and how our system responded when we saw that it was such a hot, dry year, historically so. And so we are working on the water management plan, and it will be available on saws.org, a draft of it in the coming months. So I would say stay tuned to that to read more about how we're factoring climate change in.
In addition, your question, Gary, so it is interesting that we are hearing in our modeling for the climate future that 2023 may be one of the cooler years going forward. So, which is scary, but thought-provoking. So this may be we may look back fondly.
So Brad, I'm going to pass the next one to you. Would it be nice to replace turf grasses with native grasses?
And it would, I mean, all of the grasses that are used in San Antonio at this point, they have been tested, but it's been 10 or 15 years since SAWS ran the tests on the south side of San Antonio, and where St. Augustine, Zoysia, and Bermuda they were demonstrated to be drought resilient in that they could go for 60 days without water, without dying. And it was a great study. You may have heard of it. Mark Peterson was involved with it, but it was done through A&M in San Antonio. I do wonder if we ran that study again, if St. Augustine would still be recommended as one of the 3 turf grasses installed in San Antonio. But yes, I agree with you. Yes, it would be nice to replace them all with native grasses. My program helps customers. I mean, the rewards program helps people do it themselves, but it's once you have an established Bermuda grass lawn, it is going to be hard to turn it into a native grass landscape. Actually, Cleve Powell, who you may know, did a great program on it for GBST yesterday. But it's a challenge for every homeowner. And if it could be done, I wish it could be done at the start, or that it'll be up to the city code when that changes. Right now, grass has to be installed at new properties because builders are not allowed to leave bare dirt because of the runoff. So they do install the cheapest, worst grass they can get.
So Brad, on that, I'm going to skip over one and I'll come right back to it. But how does SAWS work with residential and commercial buildings with respect to native plants? For example, eliminating the use of St. Augustine.
SAWS works with, I mean, we have to work through the city code with builders with home builders. Home builders are required by code to provide a xeriscape option, where hopefully they'll use native plants. We work with native plant vendors, and we're hoping to bring those native plant vendors into our rewards program and for customers. But working with builders, they are not required to use native plants at this time, and they do have an approved plant list. And Karen does want to begin a conversation about changing the approved plant list for San Antonio in conversation with A&M and experts, because it's probably time for it to be updated.
But we do have a lot of
sense.
We do have a lot of programs that incentivize changing out turf grass to native plants through the Water Saver Landscape Coupon, through the rewards program. And so we really encourage that. SAWS Conservation really encourages that. And that was really the genesis of garden style, right? You can have drought tolerant plants that actually beautify your landscape maybe more than grass does in a lot of our opinions, right? Okay.
But that's for existing landscapes, and for new landscapes, it is in this town, you're having to work with builders.
Yeah. But people, as soon as you move in, you can change it out. It's okay.
Yeah.
So did the increase, I'll take this one, Brad. Did the increase in 2022 reflect the new people moving into the area? Maybe people who wanted lawns that were inappropriate for San Antonio. So when we look at total GPCD, the nice thing about it is it divides by the number of people. So on a year-to-year basis, it's normalized because of that. But yeah, we know that there's a lot of folks moving to San Antonio from other communities. If you move from the Northeast, where you can have a nice lush lawn, that's going to be a different situation than what we have here. And so the more folks that come from other communities, it is an uphill challenge, as Brad mentioned earlier, for us to continue educating to these new populations that come here, but it's something that we work hard to do.
There's a question about are all water meters read electronically? And I wish that they were, and in about 4 years, we expect they all will be, but they're being replaced now with the Connect H2O meters. And some of us in this meeting tonight probably already have electronic meters, but we do predict that over the next 4 years, these are being installed, and you'll be able to read your meter on the website. Actually, Martha is working on the Smart AMI meters. and she can
Yeah,
say
so
a
you've
lot
probably
more.
heard about AMI, which is advanced metering infrastructure. That's what our CPS meters are in town. And we are putting in similar meters. In the challenge, the difference between electric meters and water meters is that there's not electricity flowing through them. So we're doing hourly reads with the Connect H2O meters. But yeah, I think the goal is by the end of 2026 that all of those will be installed. So we've installed about 10 to 15% of meters across our service area. And so stay tuned. If you don't have a My Account login, you don't have to necessarily pay your bill online, but go sign up for My Account so that as soon as you get a electronic meter, a Connect H2O meter, you'll be able to look at your use, your hourly use. Okay, here's a good one, Brad. Not just people moving to San Antonio. A lot of people in general just like the look of grass.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, that means a lot of water to support the habit.
Mhm.
Yes.
And yes. So, I always try to convince people though, and this is a great time to do it. I'm trying to get photographs of what landscapes look like right now, because this is what grass looks like. And you can see what's green right now is actually trees and plants if they have them. And so there's a great contrast visually right now. People who want green landscapes, I don't know why they choose grass, but but a lot of people do like it, and people are coming from places where it was possible. The color green, though, I think in the future, I hope that we're using, when we want green, we will plant shade.
Great point. And then Letty asked, how could we find individuals or commercial properties who are not our customers? We are not proposing to fine or to have a fee for or a surcharge for anyone who is not a SAWS customer. What we're proposing, and this may have come in around the time we were talking about customers who are in other cities. SAWS serves, I think it's 15 or 16 of the suburban cities. So Castle Hills, Hill Country Village. I'm going to blank on other ones, Brad. What are some other ones? Some of Chavano Park.
Terrell
And
Hills.
yeah, and so we'll be able to have the fee for citations in those areas that we currently can't enforce in.
There's a comment from Wendy that HOA requirements are a problem. And we do remind customers that that in city code, the city that HOAs, which are dedicatory instruments in code speak, they're not, they may not require customers to install to install sod or irrigation. They can't force you to install it or to water. They can force you to have a landscape plan, or they can require that for the look of the neighborhood. But we did mount a campaign this summer. I mean, it's still difficult working with HOAs in any kind of
we reached out to HOAs and property management companies this summer because we heard a lot of customers were calling us saying, well, I have to water more often. My HOA is mandating that I put in new grass. And so we reached out to HOAs in general, all the ones we have contact info for, and let them know that you actually can't send what we call a nasty gram. You can't send that kind of a mailer. You can't tell a customer that they have to put in grass, that's against state law and city ordinance. So we did a campaign on that this summer. Mark said he mostly quit grass. A common thing on the news is water breaks showing large water waste. Yes. Is our main breaks going to be addressed in the conservation plan? And the answer is yes. We are constantly fighting a battle against what we call water loss or non-revenue water. This is water lost in our system, and it's something that is hard to address all of water loss. You're never going to address all of it. But the more water we have to push through the system, the more we're stressing the pipes because we're pushing so much water through them. We're filling them to capacity. That leads to increased main breaks. And so we in conservation, yes, SAWS is addressing main breaks and is fixing them as fast as we can, especially in years like this. But we are also trying to reduce water use across the community to try to have less water having to be pushed through pipes. So
There's a great feature on the SAWS website now where you can see the map of main breaks and how they've been prioritized. Which is some comfort, at least if you're seeing one near your house. You can see they will work on the worst breaks first.
yes. Letty, great question on GPCD. So does GPCD ratios account for the many multifamily households that are common today? And yes, it does. So GPCD, total GPCD, which is what I was showing here, factors in all water uses across our community, and we divide all those water uses into a daily amount and then into dividing that by the total population of the community. And so we have factors for multifamily properties to say basically how many people are in each of our apartments based on how many units are in them and everything. So yes, it factors that in. Alamo Heights is a big user of water. They are actually, Alamo Heights is not a customer of ours. So they have their own, maybe beyond, but they have their own Edwards Aquifer permits and maybe other sources. Emily says she had an ongoing problem with a ghost leak for months. My plumber put me in touch with a leak detection expert. He said fluctuations in the SAWS pressure can cause phantom leaks in the irrigation system. I've moved my pressure reducing valve closer to the water meter in hopes it will fix the problem. If you had a leak detection department, it would be enormously helpful. So we actually in conservation have some specialists that we've hired over the last 6 or 7 months to help people identify leaks. It's a lot easier to identify once we have the Connect H2O meters installed, I will say, because we have that hourly data. So we go from having 1 read per month to having 700 plus reads per month. But there can be these leaks that are very hard to identify. We had actually a SAWS employee who had a leak in the main line coming into their house, and it was underneath their driveway, and she had got one of the Connect H2O meters, and all of us at SAWS turned into water nerds very quickly, and it was driving her so crazy that she ended up digging up her driveway trying to find this leak. And so it's tough. If the leak is believed to be in the irrigation system, Brad, they should install a master valve, shouldn't they?
It's a way to control it when the irrigation isn't running. Yes.
So the master valve is
You know that,
basically.
yeah. And SAWS does have a rebate for it.
Can you briefly explain what the master valve is?
What it does is it's out by, so you've got your pressure reducing valve out there and it'll be out by the backflow preventer. But when the sprinkler system is not running, it's actually a valve that actually turns the sprinkler system off. So the pipes are empty when the sprinklers aren't running. And so it only opens to let water into the system when it gets the signal from the controller that it's turning on. And when you have pinhole leaks in an irrigation system that you can't find, a master valve is an option to control it until those leaks actually surface. It's always hard to find pinhole leaks.
And so then the master valve, and Brad said we have a rebate for it. Call and get a irrigation consultation from SAWS. Call 704-SAVE to get a hold of us and schedule that. And we have a rebate for that master valve because then your leak only happens when the system's pressurized. And so the leak is almost not detectable because it's only when the system is running. Why not?
Has that comment, why not limit the percentage of turf grasses in yards, no more than 1/3 non-native turf grass? And I love your comment, and I agree. It will be up to city code in the future. I think that's a great practice, and it's what we recommend for our customers. Is no more than 1/3 grass. A third grass, a third landscaping, a third patios. And if all new houses were built that way, or if the grass was only, or if the backyards were just mulch, that is what they do now in Arizona and Las Vegas.
Yeah, and a previous comment from Jeanette said that she lives in the Northwest ETJ area and people are moving out there and installing landscapes that look like central San Antonio. The landscapers and the builders are not well informed and they're primarily concerned with putting in a cheap aesthetic landscape. And yes, we are right there with you on that one, Jeanette. One of our biggest challenges, in my opinion, is builders, because they're building to scale and they are just putting irrigation systems in, putting grass down, and it's not setting the new homeowner up or new resident up for success, or us as a community up for success. So yes. And then
Jeanette also has a
Jeanette,
comment.
on the
Does SAWS
flume
have an incentive
devices.
for flume devices? Which
And
is
we
interesting.
got rid of that
actually,
incentive.
you know, and the reason we got rid of it was actually the flume devices are great. If you have one, it's great. If you haven't had one, it's about the size of a cell phone. You put it on your water meter, and it will you can actually see your water use on your cell phone on a flume. The problem, SAWS had to discontinue its program because the flume devices are not compatible with the new electronic meters that are being installed. The electronic meters perform the same tasks, but until then, a flume will still work with an old mechanical meter, but it won't work with the new ones. So SAWS no longer has a rebate. They're still great devices.
We
Go
do
ahead,
still
Martha.
have the rebate. It's just not eligible. The flume is not an eligible device. So we do still have a flow sensor rebate. And so for folks, the other flow sensors that are on the rebate are much more expensive, I will say, than the flume device. And you have to hire a plumber because they have to cut pipe and install it in line. The cool part about the other devices is most of them have the ability to shut off your water as soon as they detect a leak, but they are much more costly. And Brad was spot on with the answer of why we're not doing flume anymore. People were myself included, Brad included, we were too attached to our flumes and didn't want the new Connect H2O meters, but the new Connect H2O meters, the benefit of them is it SAWS's problem to change the batteries. As soon as you've had to change the batteries on a flume, you won't love it as much anymore.
The SAWS batteries will last about 20 years. But I can tell you, both Martha and I, when we got our electronic meters, when they removed our flumes, it
was sad. It was a sad day.
It was sad.
But I think that the flume devices, just a little more on that, I think the flume devices have really set up our community to be excited about the data that we're going to be able to provide through Connect H2O, and kind of primed people to be ready to see it. So
and
we're
it was
excited
a
about
relief.
that.
When you get the electronic meter, you can actually see that data on your electronic meter. It just doesn't update as frequently as the flume did.
Right. And so it updates,
but it's
it's
just as
hourly
much fun.
data. Yeah, it's hourly data that updates once a day. So it updates overnight and it's in your, when you're up the next morning, you can usually see your data in the system.
Talat Shah has a question I wanted to mention. You are in the process of removing your in-ground irrigation system. And you mentioned increasing the incentives there. And you do know that SAWS does have, if you've had the irrigation consult, you would be eligible for a rebate. I'm assuming you know that, but I see that to increase those amounts, I can tell Martha.
We actually do. The incentives are based on how much water savings we see from our programs across the board, not just for that program. And so we've looked at how much, what actual savings we're seeing from folks changing to pressure reducing heads or to removing their system, whether it's functional or non-functional. And so our dollar amounts on them are really based on that data. But it is something that we know if we could increase the incentives there, we'd have maybe a lot more people who remove their irrigation system entirely, which we would love. So
Mark
Drawl
has a good question. Yeah, is use of artificial grass helpful? And is it helpful? SAWS doesn't offer a rebate on artificial grass per se. And there are reasons why, in part because we do understand that it doesn't last. It's not like it's not your grandma's AstroTurf. The new artificial turf is a superior product, but even with the new artificial turf, we've had customers removing it after a few years. And the dumping of it is always a problem. I mean, these are recycled tires. So we don't have a rebate for the artificial turf itself. Can I discourage people from using it? I mean, I think it looks good. It looks green. I wish there was a version that looked like buffalo grass. There was a blue artificial turf with a little bit of yellow in it. But we do offer rebates for people doing it to remove the irrigation underneath.
Right. And well, I would give two pieces of advice on this. We hear that some people leave in their irrigation system to water down the turf. I would say that's not necessary. So remove the irrigation system and take advantage of our rebate if you're going to do something like this. And also the other complaint that we hear from folks is the lack of drainage that you can have with synthetic turfs. But if you're going with a company or you're doing it yourself and you put a good base underneath it, then it should drain more appropriately.
I mean, everyone at Garden Style is, of course, they're going to be into living landscapes. But when I see people using artificial turf, I get it. We just don't have a rebate for it. And it is plastic, a non-living landscape. It's very hot. It's hot enough to melt tennis shoes on a ball field.
Okay, I'm reading Christopher's comment. It's a long comment. I'll just read it out loud for anyone who does not see the chat. This summer and last summer have been especially hot and dry. Unfortunately, NASA and NOAA are predicting that the ongoing El Nino event will make 2024 even hotter. Yay. Although there may, in quotes, be more rain. So ET will be very high and a flash drought could develop faster. Do you think the new drought management rules will get approved in the BOT and COSA, the Board of Trustees and COSA City Council in time to be used? Could a substantial system-wide increase in overall GPCD also be used as a threshold for stage 3? That is, okay, so two questions. The first of those, do we hope that the new drought management rules, the proposal that we brought today, will get approved in time to be used? Yes, we hope that it will be in place before next summer. So we'd be able to use these new proposals, these new tools next summer. So the first answer, yes. And I love the suggestion on could a substantial system-wide increase in overall GPCD also be used as a threshold for stage 3? I think that we'd probably look at pumping because we don't calculate a GPCD on a daily basis, basically. But I think overall pumping could probably be used. In a way, it already is, from a sense of we currently, with the current stages that are on the books for City of San Antonio, stage 3 and stage 4 are kind of emergency measures that are when our supplies are not able to meet demands. And so if we see a very high amount of pumping, that could indicate, and we see a reduction in supply or just even our normal supply, but pumping that outpaces what we can provide, we would have the ability to go to those stages. But I like the idea of looking at a 7-day average of that and having something on the books with that. So that's a great thought. I think we've gotten through all of the questions. Those were great questions. We expected nothing less. We knew you guys would have great questions.
I wish I had better answers. I wish we could require everyone to install native grasses. But they were great questions.
We appreciate all that information. I'm happy to see that SAWS is moving forward with some hopefully provisions to not only stop some of these water wasters that I see out here in the ETJ, but address some of the other issues. We really appreciate you guys spending some time with us this evening. And we will, because this is recorded, what we can do is, besides just sharing that information with our chapter, we can put a link up on our public Facebook page so that not only our members, but the friends of our chapter will see that and help to spread the word about this, if that's acceptable to you guys.
Yeah, that's great. And I would
Thank
just
you.
ask that when you do that, if you can put a link in there to wateringrules.com, we would
Yes.
really appreciate the feedback from folks. Even if you think you gave all your feedback today, please go record it there also. It's helpful for us to have and to capture it all there. And there's a little survey where you can, I think, maybe rank our proposal, like rank the different topics within our proposal. So thank you guys.
We'll be sure to do that. If there's not anything else that someone wants to enter into chat or any other questions, we will adjourn this and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.